cold CEO faints at the clinic. When he wakes up, the nurse who saved him is the same girl he fired years ago. The door to the emergency room burst open with a crash, and a pair of paramedics rolled in a stretcher at full speed. "Male, mid-30s, unresponsive," one shouted, his voice sharp with urgency, pulse fainting on his forehead. "Suspected myocardial infarction, pulse faint, pressure dropping fast." The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly as Eliza Moore stepped into the chaos, already pulling on gloves. She had just returned from checking on a post-op patient recovering from minor surgery, but all it took was one look at the incoming stretcher for every ounce of her training to surge into focus. "Get him on oxygen, prep the crash cart, monitor leads now," she said, her voice calm and clipped. Round her, nurses and technicians moved like a well-oiled machine, responding to her commands without hesitation. The man on the stretcher was pale, his lips tinged with blue, sweat glistening across his brow, and his shirt clung to his chest, soaked through. One of the paramedics had already removed his tie and was unbuttoning the top few buttons of his dress shirt. Another was attaching the defibrillator pads to his bare chest. Eliza leaned over him, slipping the oxygen mask over his face and gently tilting his head. Her fingers reached automatically for his wrist to check his pulse, but as she focused on his features, everything in her came to a halt. The sharp jawline, the slight cleft in his chin, the way his dark hair, though tousled, still managed to fall neatly to the side, and just under his chin, a faint scar she hadn't seen in years. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She leaned in closer, adjusting the mask again, trying to keep her hands from trembling. As his head lolled slightly to the side, her eyes met the full view of his face. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. Adrian Cole. Her hands froze above his chest. Her body went cold. The room didn't spin, her world did. Her heart pounded louder than the beeping monitors. In that moment, time bent, warped. It was no longer an emergency room under fluorescent light. It was 5 years ago in a boardroom, stark white walls, a quiet nod, a signature, and her world falling apart. She remembered everything. The way her hands had shaken as she held the dismissal letter, the confusion, the humiliation, the accusation of incompetence that hadn't been hers to bear. She'd been set up by a superior, used as a scapegoat for an error she had tried to prevent. But he hadn't asked questions, he hadn't looked her in the eye, he had just signed the termination without hesitation, without humanity. And now, here he was. Adrian Cole. Once her idol, her silent infatuation, and then her greatest source of betrayal. Unconscious, vulnerable, breath slipping from his body. "Eliza?" Dr. Green's voice pierced her trance, firm and direct. "We need compressions, now." Her hands hovered, just a second too long, but then instinct surged forward, louder than pain, louder than pride, louder than the ache of memories threatening to break her. She moved. "Eliza Moore, performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation," she said aloud, her voice steady. She lowered her hands to his chest and began compressions, each one sharp and rhythmic. 234, Dr. Green hovered near the monitors, charging defib to 200. "Come on, stay with us." IV lines were connected, medications administered, epinephrine injected. The team moved with mechanical grace, but Eliza stayed focused, her arms burning with every press. She didn't let herself think. Not about who he was, not about what he had done, just the simple, solemn truth that a life was slipping away beneath her hands. "Clear," the technician called. She stepped back as the paddles discharged, jolting his body. The flat line on the monitor jumped once, then again. A heartbeat. It was faint, but it was there. The room collectively exhaled. Eliza leaned back, her chest heaving. Sweat clung to her temples, her gloves damp, but her eyes never left his face. He was alive. Dr. Green gave her a quick pat on the shoulder. "Nice work, Moore. That was close." She nodded, unable to speak. Her throat was tight, because it wasn't just about the heart they had saved. It was about his heart, and everything he'd taken from hers. As Adrian was stabilized and transferred to the monitoring room, hooked up to a ventilator and sedated, Eliza remained rooted in place. She watched through the glass, the chaos slowly fading into silence around her. The past had walked through the emergency room doors, broken, breathless, and bleeding out. And this time, she had been the one with the power to decide his fate. She had chosen to save him. But somewhere deep within, beyond all logic and duty, she knew this story was far from over. The room was dim, lit only by the soft hum of early morning light filtering through the window blinds. Machines beeped steadily around the hospital bed, the monitors tracing the rhythm of a heart slowly regaining strength. The silence was calming, almost too calm for someone like Adrian Cole. His eyelids fluttered, muscles twitching with the effort of coming back to consciousness. The weight of exhaustion pulled him down, but his mind, sharp and disciplined by years of corporate war zones, began to claw toward awareness. He inhaled, shallow but steady, then blinked his eyes open. White ceiling, faint antiseptic scent, monitors, and a silhouette. Standing by the window, holding a tablet, dressed in scrubs, he blinked again. The figure moved toward him. Eliza saw the flicker of movement first and her breath caught slightly. She had been preparing for this moment, but no amount of professionalism could stop her heart from thudding louder when she saw those eyes open. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said softly, her voice calm and even, though her hands were tense beneath her clipboard. Adrian turned his head slowly. His throat was dry, and it took a moment for him to form words. "Where am I?" "You're in St. Vincent's Community Clinic," she replied. "You were brought in 2 days ago. Cardiac arrest. You've been under observation. You're stable now." His brow furrowed slightly. He studied her, as if trying to place a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "And you are?" "Eliza, Nurse Moore," she replied, deliberately choosing formality. He nodded faintly, eyes lingering on her a second longer than necessary. There was something in her voice, calm but distant. Something in the way she said his name, without reverence or disdain, just knowledge. He couldn't quite explain it, but it unsettled him. "You've been my attending nurse?" "Yes," she said, "since you arrived." He shifted in the bed, a wince flickering across his face as the soreness hit him. "How long was I unconscious?" "About 36 hours. We induced mild hypothermia to stabilize cardiac function. You responded well." "Good," he said. "I need to get my phone." Eliza didn't flinch, but she knew this was coming. The need for control, the need to return to the world he left in chaos. "We've kept your belongings secure," she said, "but the doctor recommends no work stress for at least a week. Your heart needs rest." "I have an entire company waiting," Adrian muttered. Eliza didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached over to adjust the IV drip. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, but inside her thoughts raced. It was strange how easily the muscle memory returned. The sound of his voice, the way he held his jaw when annoyed, the exact way his impatience leaked into every syllable. He still had no idea who she was, or what he had done to her, and yet here she was, checking his vitals, ensuring he stayed alive. "You're lucky to be here at all," she said finally, not unkindly. "If the ambulance had arrived 5 minutes later, you might not have made it." Adrian stilled, eyes turning to her. Something in her tone had changed. A weight, a familiarity he couldn't quite name. He studied her again, more closely now. "You seem familiar," he said slowly. "Have we met before?" Eliza hesitated. Just for a second, but in that heartbeat of silence, years rushed back. Late nights at the office, quiet smiles in the elevator, that one moment she had thought maybe he actually saw her, and then the day it all fell apart. A termination letter, a signature, no explanation. She forced a smile. "I work here often. Maybe you've seen me around." He didn't look convinced. "I never forget a face," he murmured. "Maybe yours just forgot me," she replied, almost too softly to hear. But he did hear it, and something about it stuck. She turned away before he could say more. "I'll have the doctor speak with you shortly. Try to rest, Mr. Cole." As she stepped out, Adrian lay back against the pillows, watching the door slowly close behind her. There was something about that nurse, the way she moved, the way she looked at him, not with admiration or fear, but with a guarded history. It made no sense, and yet it felt like a thread that had been left dangling somewhere long ago. He didn't know who she really was, but something in his chest told him he had seen her before, and he had done something that mattered. Adrian Cole was not made for stillness. Even confined to a hospital bed, tethered to IV lines and monitors, his instincts screamed for action. Within 12 hours of regaining consciousness, he was already demanding updates from his assistant, asking for his laptop and insisting that his phone be returned. Every 5 minutes, the room filled with sharp questions, terse voice notes, and clipped conference calls, until Eliza stepped in. "Mr. Cole, your heart is still recovering," she said calmly, yet firmly, adjusting the monitor next to him. "You need rest, not boardroom negotiations." "I'm resting," Adrian replied, not looking up from his phone. "I'm also keeping a billion-dollar company from crumbling while I lie here like a paperweight." Eliza inhaled slowly, suppressing the frustration boiling beneath her professionalism. "Your vitals spike every time you take a call. That's not recovery. That's self-sabotage." He glanced at her. "You have no idea what it means to carry this much responsibility." "I have some idea of what it means to lose everything," she murmured. Adrian looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" Eliza paused. She had promised herself she would stay detached, professional, but there was something about the arrogance in his voice, the complete disregard for his own health, for the people around him, that cracked her restraint wide open. She turned to him, eyes steady. "It means I once worked for a man who thought nothing of signing someone's future away because it was convenient, a man who didn't care to ask questions, who didn't look twice before stamping a name out of a company's system." Adrian blinked. "Are you talking about me?" Eliza didn't back down. "Yes." He stared at her, confusion knitting across his brow. "I've never fired someone without reason." "You didn't even know my name," she said, voice quiet now but no less powerful. "I was a junior associate at Cole Financial, 5 years ago. I took the fall for a report error that wasn't mine. Your head of operations made a mistake, but I was the easiest one to sacrifice. You signed the letter, didn't even glance at it. I lost everything, my confidence, my savings, my shot." The room fell into stunned silence. Adrian sat upright, stunned, the color draining from his face. "Eliza Moore," he said slowly. "I remember now." "Congratulations," she replied, turning away. "Now you're trying to destroy something else, your own body, all because you're too proud to let go of a meeting for a few days." She reached for the tablet to update his records. "I suggest you think about that before your heart gives out a second time." Then she walked out, leaving Adrian speechless in a room that suddenly felt much colder. He didn't call anyone for the rest of the day. That night, long after the clinic quieted, Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Eliza Moore. How had he not realized? The girl from the marketing department, eager, quiet, quick on her feet. He remembered now how she had been blamed for a disastrous quarterly report, how she had cried when security escorted her out. He hadn't looked into the case. His COO had assured him it was handled. One signature, one less problem. He hadn't thought about it again. Until now. Guilt crawled through him, slow and sharp. He reached for the bedside table and pulled out his phone. With effort, he logged into his archived HR system. After several failed attempts and 2 password resets, he found the termination file. Eliza Moore, dismissed, mishandling of financial presentation documents, no review, no appeal. Attached was a memo, later forwarded privately to HR, stating the department manager admitted fault, but only after her dismissal. Adrian's stomach twisted. He had ruined her career with a pen stroke, and now she had saved his life with both hands. He turned off the screen and lay in the dark, breath shallow. He had built a career on decisiveness, on fast calls and clean breaks, but for the first time he wondered, how many others had he failed to see, and why did it matter so much that this woman, the one he had wronged the worst, had chosen to stay by his side? It mattered more than he was ready to admit. Adrian didn't sleep that night. Even after the monitors showed his vitals had returned to stable levels, After the nurses dimmed the lights and the clinic settled into its usual soft late-night hum, he lay awake, eyes wide open, jaw tight, mind spinning in relentless circles. The pulse monitor beeped in steady rhythm, but his thoughts raced in a rhythm of their own. He couldn't stop thinking about what Eliza had said. Her voice kept echoing through the sterile silence, low and edged with a pain he hadn't known he was capable of causing. "You didn't even know my name." And the most damning part of it was, she was absolutely right. He hadn't. At the time, she had been just another name in a stack of HR decisions, one file among dozens, a junior associate in a department flagged for inefficiencies. The quarterly report had been a disaster. A client nearly walked away. The board was breathing down his neck, demanding accountability. His COO, Calvin Jensen, had assured him they had found the problem. "She's young, sloppy, easily replaced." Adrian hadn't questioned it. He had nodded, signed the termination letter, and moved on to the next crisis, the next merger, the next victory. But now he couldn't move on, not from this, not from her, not from the way she'd looked at him, as if he were a living reminder of everything unfair in the world, as if the pain he caused still sat on her chest, like a weight she'd had to carry alone. He reached for the tablet on his bedside table, fingers trembling slightly. Logging into the company's secure archive took time, passwords long forgotten, layers of permissions requiring verification codes. But he was patient. For once, he wasn't looking for a shortcut. When the files finally loaded, he typed her name. Moore, Eliza. There it was, her termination file, dated 5 years ago. He opened it, and instantly his stomach clenched. Reason for dismissal: mishandling of client financial reports, breach of protocol, risk to investor trust. The report. He remembered it well. It had been chaos. One of their most valuable clients had threatened to pull funding over misrepresented data. He remembered the late-night meetings, the panic, the way Calvin had assured him it had been an intern-level mistake. His eyes scanned the document further. Attached at the end of the file was an internal memo, dated 2 weeks after Eliza had been dismissed. The words blurred for a second as his heart thudded, then sharpened with horrifying clarity. Department Manager Calvin Jensen has acknowledged he mistakenly submitted the wrong version of the report. The error originated from his personal drive, not the junior associate's. The associate had flagged the discrepancy but was overridden in final edits. Adrian froze. She hadn't made the mistake. She had tried to stop it, and he had ignored her. His hands went cold. His mind reeled. He kept reading. Emails, timestamps, a note from HR recommending discretion. The board had never been told. The case had been buried quietly to avoid embarrassment. There had been no apology, no reinstatement, just silence. Adrian leaned back against the pillows, breathing hard, guilt crashing into him with the weight of something far heavier than the heart attack he'd suffered. He remembered her now, the young woman who always arrived early, who stayed late, who took meticulous notes during meetings even when no one asked. She had been kind to everyone, executives, interns, even the janitorial staff. She smiled often, spoke little, and worked harder than most. She hadn't been just a name. She had been exceptional. And he had destroyed that, her chance, her confidence, her start, without hesitation, without even bothering to see her. Now, she was the one watching over him, the one who had pressed against his chest, fighting to bring his heartbeat back, the one who caught him when he stumbled, the one whose voice had both accused and saved him. He set the tablet aside and covered his face with his hands. He had made mistakes before, poor investments, bad hires, strategic missteps. But this wasn't just a professional error. This was personal. This was someone's life. And he had broken it. Adrian had always prided himself on being decisive, controlled, sharp, but tonight, lying in a hospital bed, with nothing but the sound of monitors and regret, everything he thought he understood about right and wrong, power and compassion, began to blur. He couldn't undo what had been done. But maybe, just maybe, he could do something now. He could start by really seeing her, not as the girl from the file, not as the mistake he let happen, but as the woman who, despite everything, had chosen to bring him back from the edge. He owed her more than an apology. He owed her the beginning of something real. Rain lashed against the clinic windows, a steady downpour drumming like 1,000 tiny hammers against the roof. The storm had knocked out the power moments ago, plunging the entire building into semi-darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim, reddish glow down the narrow corridors. Eliza moved quickly but carefully, flashlight in hand, checking patient rooms and ensuring the backup generators were kicking in properly. Her rubber-soled shoes squeaked faintly against the linoleum floor as she rounded the corner near the recovery wing. Her thoughts were scattered, half on the storm, half on the way Adrian had been quiet since their last conversation. He had not demanded his phone again. He had barely spoken, in fact. But she had felt his eyes on her more often, and in them something had shifted. No longer arrogance, not exactly guilt either, something closer to searching. As she reached for the supply closet door, her foot slid suddenly. An unseen puddle of water pooled from a leak in the ceiling. Eliza let out a sharp gasp as she lost her balance. Her flashlight flew from her hand, clattering against the wall, and in the split second between her slipping and the floor rushing up to meet her, she felt arms catch her, strong, steady, and too familiar to be anyone else. She looked up. Adrian. He stood there in a loose, gray, patient tee, IV band still taped to his arm. His expression tense. "I thought you were asleep," she breathed, stunned, still half in his arms. "I heard you fall," he said, his voice low and ragged. I didn't want to stay still. I was afraid that maybe this time I'd stand by and do nothing again." For a moment, neither of them moved. The storm outside roared on, but inside, the silence between them grew thick with something unspoken. Eliza was still in his arms, her hand curled unconsciously into the fabric of his shirt, her heartbeat echoing loud in her ears. His eyes were on hers, intense but unguarded. "I'm fine," she said, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. "I know," he replied, but didn't let go. The moment stretched. She could feel his breath on her cheek, warm despite the chill in the air. His hands were gentle but firm on her waist, steadying her. She knew she should pull away, remind him he was still her patient, remind herself he was still the man who once ended her career. But she didn't, because right now none of that felt as real as the way he was looking at her, not with power, not with pride, but with something like awe, like regret, like hope. "Eliza," he said, her name barely audible, like a confession. She stepped back gently and he let her, reluctantly. Her cheeks were flushed, but not from the fall. "You should not be out of bed," she managed, reaching down for the flashlight. "I'll survive," he replied, watching her. She smiled, just a flicker, but it was there. Clearly. He chuckled softly, and it was the first time she'd heard it. It startled her more than anything else. It wasn't cold or calculated. It was warm, human. "Come on," she said, turning toward the hallway. "Let's get you back before Dr. Green finds out and sends you to the emergency room." Adrian followed her, slower now, but still close. As they walked, the lights from the emergency systems flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the walls. Neither of them spoke again, but something in the air had changed. Their steps were more in sync, their silence more comfortable. And for the first time, Eliza wondered if healing didn't only happen with medicine and monitors. Sometimes it began with a fall, and the hands that chose to catch you. The clinic returned to normal in the days following the storm, but nothing between Eliza and Adrian felt quite the same. He no longer demanded his phone the moment he woke. He read books Eliza brought him from the modest patient library, biographies, essays on leadership, even a medical memoir or two. He asked questions now, not out of impatience, but out of genuine curiosity. He started conversations, short at first, but increasingly sincere. More than once, Eliza caught him watching her, not in that arrogant, detached way from their past, but as if he was trying to understand her, trying to learn who she was now, not just who she had been. Then one afternoon, Dr. Green stopped Eliza in the hallway, holding a folder. "You didn't tell me your community clinic project got greenlit," he said, smiling. Eliza froze. What? The grant application you submitted last year. It's been approved. Full funding. Equipment, personnel, even mobile units. The Whitmore Foundation signed off on it last week. Eliza took the folder in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the details. Her vision for affordable healthcare access in underserved neighborhoods brought to life. A dream she had nearly given up on. "But they rejected it months ago," she murmured. "I never resubmitted." Dr. Green shrugged. "Well, someone did, under a partner organization, anonymous backing. It came through fast." She clutched the folder to her chest, heart racing. That evening, after most of the staff had gone home, she walked into Adrian's room with the folder still in hand. He looked up from his book, then quickly registered the look on her face. "You knew," she said softly. He didn't deny it. "I may have spoken to someone, quietly. Why?" He paused, then closed the book. "Because I've spent a lot of time building things that only served people like me," he said. "And when I saw what you were trying to build, I realized it mattered more." She stood still, watching him. There was no performance in his voice, no business pitch, just a man trying to do the right thing. "I didn't want you to feel like it was a favor," he added, "or some apology." "But it is, isn't it?" she asked. "It's what I should have done 5 years ago," he admitted. "See you, believe in you." Eliza looked down, the lump in her throat making it hard to speak. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," he said. "That's why I wanted to." She nodded slowly, swallowing the emotion building behind her ribs. "Thank you." A quiet understanding passed between them, something more profound than all the apologies in the world. In the days that followed, Adrian asked if he could help, not as a donor, but as a partner. Eliza hesitated at first, but when she saw how he listened, truly listened, to community leaders, to her team, to the people they were trying to reach, she agreed. They started meeting regularly, sketching out plans, brainstorming outreach programs, designing mobile clinics. Adrian brought strategy and access. Eliza brought heart and ground-level wisdom. Their rhythm became natural. He filled in the places where she needed structure. She softened the spaces he never realized were hard. Sometimes their hands brushed when reaching for the same blueprint. Sometimes their eyes lingered a little too long after a shared laugh. But they never rushed it. They let the moments unfold, like slow-burning embers catching light one by one. And slowly, steadily, the distance between them, once so vast and heavy with history, began to disappear. Not with grand declarations, but with trust, with time, with two people choosing, day by day, to meet in the middle of who they were and who they were becoming. The call came on a crisp Thursday morning. Adrian had just finished organizing supply deliveries for Eliza's community clinic when his phone buzzed. The number was familiar, his former board chairman, a man he had once reported to before he stepped down for medical leave. He hesitated before answering, a pit growing in his stomach even before a word was spoken. "Adrian," the voice came through smoothly, "we want you back. The CEO seat is open. The vote was unanimous." The air around him shifted. New York, the boardroom, the skyscrapers and six-figure deals. It was everything he had worked for, everything that once defined him, and yet, it didn't feel like his life anymore. "I'll need some time," Adrian replied calmly. "You've earned this," the man continued. "No one can lead like you, but you need to decide soon. People are waiting." He hung up, the silence in the room louder than any meeting he had ever chaired. Later that evening, Adrian climbed the stairs to the rooftop terrace of the clinic, a quiet place where he knew Eliza liked to go when the day felt heavy. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting warm light across the buildings. Eliza stood at the railing, her hair pulled back, wind teasing loose strands around her face. She didn't turn when she heard him. She just smiled, sensing it was him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly. "I think I saw my old self," Adrian replied. She glanced at him then, curious. "They want me back," he said. "CEO of the parent firm, global reach, full power." Eliza's expression didn't change. "Congratulations," she said after a pause. "But it would mean leaving," he added. "New York, The clinic, you." Now her face softened. "I figured that much." Adrian stepped closer, his voice low, unsteady. "You know, I spent years making decisions that were purely logical, strategic, cold even. I thought that was strength. And now?" she asked. "Now I realize," he said, meeting her eyes, "the strongest thing I could ever do is choose something that doesn't come with guarantees, something that's messy and real." He took a breath. "I want to stay here, with you, with this mission, this clinic. It's the first thing that's ever felt like it matters." Eliza's eyes shimmered in the fading light. "You don't have to give up everything," she whispered. "I'm not," he said. "I'm trading up, trading power for purpose, profit for presence. I don't want to be a man who wins deals and loses the one person who made him want to be better." Silence wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Then, slowly, Eliza reached for his hand. He took it like it was the first real thing he had ever held, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by city lights and the hum of life continuing below, Adrian made the most important decision of his life. Not for shareholders, not for headlines, but for the one heart that had taught his own how to feel again. The ribbon stretched across the entrance of the brand-new community health center fluttered in the breeze, its white silk glowing under the soft morning sun. Rows of folding chairs lined the courtyard, filled with community members, local leaders, clinic staff, and press. Balloons danced gently in the wind, children giggled in the background, and in the center of it all stood a sleek plaque that read, "Moore and Cole Hope Center." Eliza stood at the podium, elegant and calm, dressed in white with her signature name tag pinned just over her heart. Her speech had been heartfelt, filled with gratitude and vision, honoring the patients who had inspired the mission, the team who had built it, and the city that had embraced their cause. When she stepped down, Adrian stepped up. He wore a navy suit without a tie, his smile softer now, his posture more human than powerful. He adjusted the mic, eyes searching for hers in the front row, and when he found them, the world around him disappeared. "I used to live by numbers," he began, voice deep but steady. "Quarterly reports, market shares, margins, every decision, every person was a calculation." He paused, his gaze never leaving Eliza, until one day, "I signed a paper that I didn't read, and that paper ended a woman's career, someone who should have been seen, nurtured, believed in. But I didn't see her." The crowd hushed. "And then one day, years later, I collapsed and woke up to the same woman saving my life, not once, but over and over again." Eliza's eyes were already glistening. Adrian stepped out from behind the podium holding a small velvet box in his hand. "I've signed thousands of contracts in my life, some of them worth millions, but today, I'm here because I want to sign something else." He stopped in front of her. "Something worth more than any deal I've ever made." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Adrian dropped to one knee. "Eliza Moore," he said, voice low but unwavering, "you saw the best in me when I only showed you the worst. You gave me purpose when I thought I was only power. You healed my heart in every way that mattered. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks as she laughed through her sob. "Yes," she whispered, nodding before her voice found its strength. "Yes, Adrian, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to kiss her, the crowd erupting in applause and cheers. Children clapped, doctors whistled, and even the mayor wiped a tear from his cheek. But for Eliza and Adrian, there was no sound, just the echo of one choice, one love, that had rewritten both their stories. That evening, the celebration gave way to silence. The two of them walked hand in hand along the beach just outside the city, barefoot in the cool sand, the orange sky casting long shadows behind them. The waves whispered at their feet, the sea calm, as if honoring the peace they had found in each other. Eliza leaned her head on Adrian's shoulder. "If I hadn't saved you that night," she murmured, voice wrapped in wind and warmth, "everything would be different." Adrian's fingers tightened around hers. "If you hadn't saved me," he said, "maybe I'd still be alive, but I wouldn't be living." He turned to her, brushing a kiss gently across her forehead, And for once, there was no past haunting them, no future frightening them. Only the present, filled with trust, with purpose, and with a love so hard-earned, so deeply healed, it needed no more words, just the sound of waves, and the beating of two hearts that had finally come home. Thank you for staying with us through this unforgettable journey, a story of redemption, second chances, and a love that was born not in perfection, but in healing. If Eliza and Adrian's story touched your heart, reminded you that people can change, that wounds can heal, and that love often finds us in the most unexpected places, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we believe in stories that do more than entertain. They remind us of who we are, who we've been, and who we still have the chance to become. Subscribe now to Soul-Stirring Stories to join a growing community of hearts drawn to hope, humanity, and healing. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't loud. They whisper their way into your soul. We'll see you in the next one.